I want to give you my son, your savior, Jesus Christ, ichthus, the fish. And I'm holding it up and I realize that this golden fish is Jesus in this fairy tale dream that I'm in. And I know in the dream that this is real. I know in the dream that Jesus is giving me this gift of himself and of the knowledge, and he's speaking the language that only makes sense to me.
You hungry?
Am I hungry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always hungry.
Of course you're hungry. Come on, let's eat. This is great. So,
This
Eric,
is beautiful.
clearly, you're anybody would agree, you're the smartest guy on this boat. You went to Yale, you wrote all these great books, Bonhoeffer, Luther, If You Can Keep It. Were you sort of groomed to be this kind of guy, just go the academic route and be the cultural commentator? Like, was that how your parents is that the path they pushed you on?
Not even close, no. Absolutely not. I was raised in humble circumstances. My mom and dad are immigrants to the U.S. My dad came from Greece. My mom came from Germany. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, and very proud of that. And, proud working class immigrant upbringing. I certainly didn't think that I would be, doing what I'm doing right now. And I did not have my Jesus freak born again experience till around my 25th birthday. So my whole life, it's in God's hands. But I did not. And by the way, you know what? I should talk about my costume. This is a joke. This is just like, I just thought if we're going on a boat, I have to dress like we're going yachting. So I think that maybe I'll just put on my normal glasses, and maybe I'll lose the double-breasted jacket. Could you live with that?
You still look cool.
I grew up. I did grow up in the Greek Orthodox Church, but I think the problem with what I would call like ethnic Christianity or cultural Christianity is a lot of times you don't get the guts. So I was a good kid. The Greek Orthodox community was a tremendously loving, warm, good community. But when I went to college, Yale University, those places are so hostile to faith and so hostile to like heartland values and traditional values,
right.
Whether of sexuality or of the unborn or like all that stuff. You enter that environment as like a kid and saying like, okay, here I am, my parents didn't go to college, so tell me how to think, right?
Yeah.
And before I knew it, I kind of drank that Kool-Aid, and I also realized that I had not been prepared in the church. Like, do I really believe Jesus rose from the dead? I mean, Greeks, we always say, Christos Anesti at Easter, we proclaim it, but I thought, do I believe that? I don't know, is that just something we say or whatever? So I really began to doubt that what I thought was true. Like, I kept thinking, like, do I even know? Have I even thought about it? So by the time I graduated, I was totally lost. And I think a lot of churches don't realize that you've got to prepare young people to face hostility. And Yale is extremely hostile. Most of academia is very hostile, but Yale's at the top of the list to serious biblical faith. At some point, you have to figure out what is true. And I had a big wake-up call around my 25th birthday. When I was 24, things got so bad. I wanted to be a writer. I graduated Yale, and I realized I don't know what I'm doing with myself, so I was kind of floating around. And at some point, I was so lost, and I wasn't even making any money. You know what happens if you kind of float and flounder after college? Do you know what happens?
No, I never went to college.
You end up moving back in with your parents. It's very embarrassing. And if your parents are European immigrants who worked their tails off to put you through college, it's really embarrassing. It was a really harsh time for me, and that was when I became a Christian. Things were so painful that for the first time in my life, I was really open to maybe the Jesus stuff.
Tell me the Jesus story. I want to hear this from a guy like you, who clearly is, you're a smart, thinking, intelligent person. What kind of Jesus story? I heard something about a fish.
When I was living with my parents that fateful year, it really was an agony. I've struggled with depression. I've been open about that. I've had serious problems with depression, whatever. And this time in my life, not only did I have depression, but it was, my circumstances were agony. I was in such pain that I met a guy who started sharing his faith with me. His name's Ed Tuttle, and he's a graphic designer. And he probably could see that I was a little lost or whatever, but so he befriended me. He's sharing Jesus with me. And I had this attitude like, don't get too close with that weird stuff. Like, you guys are weird. I don't want to become one of you, like, part of the cult. But I was in enough pain that I was kind of like, well, tell me a little more. So I was asking questions at the same time that I'm like, I don't want to have a Bible study with you. I don't want to go to church, but tell me more. So in my pain over the course of a year, at some point he says, well, why don't you like ask God to reveal himself to you? And I thought, well, what does that even mean? Like I'm gonna pray and I don't even know if I'm praying to the oxygen or to, is there a God? But sometimes in my pain, as I'd go for runs or something near my parents' house, I would say, God, if you're there, reveal yourself, I need a sign. And one night, he gave me a sign. Actually, it was a dream. It was around my 25th birthday. If you broke my life up into 3 parts, you'd say, what's the most important thing in your life? 3 things. Being Greek, like that whole community and the Greek stuff, or whatever. In fact, my father would always say, when he'd see a fish on the back of a car, he would always say, Jesus Christos Theos imon sotir, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, our Savior. Ichthus is fish, and the early Christians would use the fish symbol because it was the acronym, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, our Savior. So every time my father would see a fish on the back of a car, you know, the Greek stuff is so important to Greeks that he was like, that's a Greek word, and he would explain to me that that's Jesus Christ, the Son of God, our Savior. So the Greek thing's really important. The second thing that's important to me, semi-ironically, is fishing. Growing up, when I was not studying or watching TV, watching a Dean Martin roast, I was fishing. That's my thing, right? The third thing that was important to me was the life of the mind. When I went to Yale and whatever, I was trying to figure out the meaning of life, but sort of from reading literature and, you know, a little Jung, a little Freud, a little bit trying to figure out what is the meaning of life, because I was genuinely wanting to know, does life make sense? And I came up with this kind of new age concept of a frozen lake, right? And the ice on the frozen lake is the conscious mind. So this gets into Jung a little bit, right? Into Freud, right? The ice is the conscious mind, and the water beneath the ice is the unconscious or the collective unconscious, which Jung says is God. It's not God, but he says it's God. So I kind of thought, that's cool. Okay, so the goal of life is to drill through the ice to touch the water. Great. What does that mean? Nobody knows. There's a lot of gobbledygook. But at the time, I was kind of like tossing these ideas around. So one night around my 25th birthday, I had a dream. And in the dream, I'm fishing on Candlewood Lake in Danbury, Connecticut, where I fished many times. Ice fishing. I'm ice fishing. I'm standing on the ice. It is a glorious winter day. Bright blue sky, bright snow, ice, bright sun. And I look at the hole where we're ice fishing, and I see a fish pointing its snout out. And I look down, I go,
This is in the dream?
In the dream.
It's in the dream?
Yeah, this doesn't happen in real life.
Okay.
And so I look down, and I reach down in the dream, and I pick up the fish, and it's a pike or a pickerel, and they have this kind of bronze coloring on the side. In the bright light of the sun, the bronze coloring on it looked golden. And then I realized in the dream, it doesn't look golden. It is golden. It's like a fairy tale. It is a living golden fish. And I'm holding it up, and suddenly I realize in the dream that God is one-upping me with my own symbol system. I realize in the dream that God is saying to me, you wanted to drill through the ice to touch inert water, to touch some kind of collective unconscious. I want to give you something better. I want to give you my Son, your Savior, Jesus Christ, Ichthus, the fish. And I'm holding it up, and I realize that this golden fish is Jesus in this fairy tale dream that I'm in. And I know in the dream that this is real. I know in the dream that Jesus is giving me this gift of himself and of the knowledge, and he's speaking the language that only makes sense to me. If anybody else had this dream, they would just be like, they'd roll over and go back to sleep. But I knew that this
just wasn't bad pizza.
This was the best kind of pizza ever. Honestly, I knew in the dream, my journey is over, my search is over. God has given me the gift of himself. Like, it just was so mind-blowing to me. And in the dream, I was filled with joy. It's real, it's true, Jesus is real. I was absolutely changed instantly. And the next day I went to work and I told my friend Ed Tuttle about this dream. He's like, well, what does it mean? What happened? And I said to him words that I would never have said before. I said, I have accepted Jesus. This is freaky, real, true story.
That is so cool.